Hello and welcome to my brand new podcast. I'm Nicky Raby and I'm thrilled that you're joining us. I do lots of things. I'm an actor, coach, writer, speaker and a mum. And in my coaching work, I work with creatives, personal brands, freelancers and small businesses. In this podcast, I want to talk about success, but not in the traditional sense. I want to bring you conversations that discuss success, what it means, and how there are many different versions. We're going to be talking about business, branding, becoming visible, saying no, saying yes, and how you can create a thriving portfolio career doing more of what you love and less of what you don't. Sometimes there can be a certain mystery around the online world, so I'm going to be asking my guests how they started and grew, how they get paid, how they stand out, and how they create success on their terms. As always, please check the show notes for all things we mention and come and say hi over on social media at Nicky Raby or via my website nickyraby.com/podcast. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of talking to Suzy Reading. She's the author of The Self-Care Revolution, she's a well-being psychologist, and she's a mother of two. She's a chartered psychologist, yoga teacher, and health coach, and she specialises in self-care, helping people to manage their stress, their emotions, and their energetic bank balance. It was her life experience of motherhood colliding with the terminal illness of her father that sparked her passion for self-care, which she now teaches to her clients, young and old, to cope during periods of stress, loss and change, and to boost their resilience in the face of future challenges. Suzy is a contributing editor for Psychologies magazine and the psychology expert for well-being brand Neom Organics. She figure skated her way through her childhood, growing up on the northern beaches of Sydney, and now makes her home in the hills of Hertfordshire in the UK. Her first book, The Self-Care Revolution, is published by Asta, and it's out now. Hi Suzy, how are you?
Hi Nicky, I'm really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and it was a treat to spend a lovely weekend with you reading your fantastic new book. So I guess I want to kick off there by talking about that and asking you, what is self-care?
Ooh, do you know what? I love this question because it's such a buzzword and there's such a thirst for it and a natural appetite, but I think it needs clarification because it's a bit confusing, isn't it? And I think the reason is that what one person finds nourishing, someone else might not. So here's the definition. Self-care is healthcare. In its simplest form, it's nourishment, and it's nourishment for the head, the heart, and the body.
And it can be at different things at different times as well.
Yes.
Suddenly, Monday, and we're recording this on the 15th of January, which is a Blue Monday. So for me, it's like filling my stomach full of good food, is taking rest, is enjoying the quiet nights. And then tomorrow, Zippy Tuesday, I'll be hopping and skipping and running maybe.
That's it. It's getting quiet and listening to what your body mind needs and delivering that, because you're spot on. Like what you need in one moment might not float your boat in the next. So it's having a really broad toolkit from which to draw so that there's something in any moment that gives you either that lift or that opportunity to vent, whatever it is that you need.
And why do you think that it's so important and so prevalent today?
Do you know what? I think it's a lot to do with, from my perspective, I think it's the advent of positive psychology. So about 10 years ago, positive psychology was born, and there's been a wonderful swathe of research that is looking into what are the things that make life worth living. So it's kind of turning psychology on its head. Rather than trying to fix what's wrong, which is sort of like the disease model, it's now looking at what are the building blocks to a life that is full of flourishing, not just an absence of ill health, but true well-being. So a lot of the research that's coming out is looking at basic lifestyle factors, specific coping strategies, or how to harness the mind to enhance well-being. And I think look at how many books have just come out on self-care in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a movement. We're recognizing that we need to be engaging in nourishing acts to help us weather just the inevitable curveballs of life, because life is full of stress. That's just the fact, isn't it? It's not going to go away. So what are the practices? What are the smart habits that will help us cope best and flourish?
Absolutely. And I know a lot of my listeners have portfolio careers, or if they don't, or if they're in corporate or have their own small business, they have a lot of hats to wear throughout the day.
Yes.
They have a lot of shifts or different kind of energies. Even if I look at my morning so far up until this point, I've been wrestling with a toddler who didn't really want to go to nursery. I was helping my partner who's got a bad back. I've done some emails. I've tried to vaguely make myself look presentable. This is why the podcast is such a beautiful thing.
Yes.
But you need to have that bag of tricks that is going to see you through. And it was really interesting reading the book and hearing about those barriers that we put in the way of self-care. Things like I don't have time, or I don't have the energy, or money's a bit tight this month. But when I read the guilt bit, that was absolutely, it slapped me around the chops, let's just say, because as mums, as women, we can't do what our own parents did and do all of the things. I watched my mum having a full-time job and 2 small children and trying to navigate that, and still sort of feeling guilty if she wasn't creating the cake for the Harvest Festival or whatever it might be. The to-do list was endless. So I would love to hear a bit more about how people can overcome those barriers.
Absolutely. And you've nailed those barriers. I think there are 4 primary barriers. The first 3 are, I don't have time, I don't have energy, and I can't afford it. Now, those barriers are blown away when we open up our eyes to what actually constitutes self-care. Yes? If you have a narrow view of self-care, thinking that it's got to be, okay, I've got to go off for a massage, or it's got to be a spa day, or it's got to be an hour of my time devoted to some particular practice, well then, who has time on a regular basis for all of those things?
Yeah.
Clearly make time. It's still worth it. But what we need are simple micro moments of nourishment dotted through our day. And when you see self-care through that lens, we understand that it becomes so much more accessible. Yeah, and I'm talking about things like, just watching a bird on the wing. You can be doing the washing up and ruminating on that experience, or you could do the washing up mindfully and seek out a bird on the wing at the same time.
Yes.
It doesn't take any extra time. It doesn't take any energy. Or it could be as simple as, okay, so of an evening, you can sit and have a brain fade in front of the TV, or you could choose to watch something that's really uplifting, or listen to music, or talk to your partner, or listen to a podcast, or have an audiobook where you're being read to. Now, none of those things take any energy, yes, but they're deeply nourishing. So it's just opening your eyes up to what constitutes self-care. And none of those things are terribly expensive either. So those first 3 are blown away by when we broaden our idea of what self-care is. The final one, the guilt, I think it's a big one. It's a big one for all of us. And I think a big one especially for mothers. It's a big one for people that run their own business, because, there's never an off switch. You've never done it all, have you?
I think I'll just take the rest of the month off.
Yeah. So the key there, I think there are lots of analogies. I use them in my book as well. The whole oxygen mask thing, that you need to tend to yourself before you tend to those in your care. In life-threatening circumstances, I think that really works. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't think that starts to sort of scratch the surface of guilt, does it? We still feel guilty putting ourselves first. So the mantra I use there is, it's not me first, it's me as well. It's just making sure that your health and well-being is also on the radar, because this is a long game that we're playing. And if you can only sustain what you're doing for a short period of time and then fall over, then, you're not being of service to anyone. Yeah, so it's just making sure that we can keep going and keep giving, because that's what all the people in our care need from us. It really truly is the ultimate win-win.
And I realise that even basic things like if I haven't had a good breakfast in the morning, if I haven't drunk water, if I haven't brushed my hair and put a bra on, I mean, I'm not going far without a bra on, but it's those sort of things that I need. They're really easy to do, and they're really easy not to do. And when I do them, life becomes brighter and more brilliant. Your story in the book, when your daughter was born, gosh, it really resonated with me. Not that I had the exact situation by any means, but navigating the early days and weeks and hours even of motherhood is something quite huge for all of us. And one thing that came up for me was, throughout my pregnancy, there was so much emphasis on the baby, or how you were going to create the nursery, or how you were feeling in pregnancy. And when my son was born, he was a lot bigger than I thought he was going to be. He was 9 pounds 10. I'd had 3 days of labour, an emergency C-section, and a hungry baby. And it was like starting a marathon, exhausted. But yet in those early days, I realise this, if I go on and I have another baby, and lucky enough to have one at another stage, it really made me feel, next time if I do it, I need to really look after myself as well, because I know in those baby shops you can get distracted by buying all of the weird buggy clips that you think you need. And actually what I needed to do was to buy myself some really good moisturiser, because my skin was so dried out from feeding a baby all of this time. So I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about that, if there are mums who are listening, how you can prepare for those early days and weeks when something so tiny really needs all of your care and attention.
Absolutely. And all of this is stuff that I've learnt the really hard way. And I learnt that by, I completely subjugated all of my needs. And I think when you're parenting a newborn, to a certain extent, you have to do that, right? Because they wake up and cry in the middle of the night. You can't just roll over.
Alive, aren't we?
Yes, exactly. You can't just roll over and say, "Oh no, not now."
I don't really fancy it.
That's it. You've got to get up. You've got to plow on. But at the same time, you've got to understand that you need to fuel your body and fuel your mind so that you can make good decisions. And I think that's the thing that became really clear to me. It was like one healthy practice dropped away, and then I found myself making a host of other less than helpful choices. And I found myself in what I call energetic bankruptcy, where I literally was flat on my back just thinking, oh my Lordy, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. I mean, thankfully I had wonderful support around me, and I did. I knew I could step up and get through what was required of me, but it wasn't fun. No. Second time round, I can remember in the first 10 days of Teddy's life, we had a birthday celebration for another family member, and there was the remainder of a rainbow cake. And I devoured that in that 10 days with such abandon, thinking, I need this. Yeah. I just need the sustenance, because I have a little boy who's feeding every 3 hours. I've got to feed my brain so I can think straight. And it was making sure that I had things in the house that I could nourish myself with in terms of, easy choices that were easy to prepare so I could feed my brain. Yeah. It was just learning that the hard way the first time. I think what helps is sitting down when you're feeling inspired. And if you're not feeling terribly inspired, then do it with a friend, so you've got someone to bounce off. And writing down some of the things that you find just fill your energetic bank balance, that top up your energetic bank. Because when you're sleep deprived and you're time squeezed and you're overstimulated, that's when it's literally impossible to think of something that's going to help you. We're least resourceful and creative in those moments, aren't we? Yeah. We literally need it written down for us. So that's what I would urge anyone, whether you're embarking on setting up a new business, moving countries, renovating a house or having a baby,
or
proactively
doing all of them at the same time.
Yeah, all of the same, exactly.
We often do these things, don't we?
We
Yeah,
do.
Of course, let's do that as well.
Why not? Write it down. Have it there at fingertips reach. Have it on your phone if that works. And then whenever you feel that you need a little boost or an opportunity to let go, there's something there. You'll be reminded in the moment. And I think that's probably why the framework that I've created, I think that's the thing that really helped bring self-care to life for me and for my clients, because it just gives some shape. That vitality wheel helps people think about what's accessible to me in this moment. What can I do? What's going to meet the need, but also what's available? Yeah, and that, I think, brings it to life.
And it brings it to the present moment of what can I do right now, rather than thinking, well, I'll save up for 6 months to go on that fortnightly retreat to Bali. It's not necessarily practical, because who wants to take a newborn on a flight to Bali first and foremost, but also having that time and that space just to spend on you is not feasible for everybody. No,
and sometimes the things that we used to do to replenish ourselves before having kids or before starting running that business, sometimes they become inaccessible, yes? Or the thought of doing it actually creates so much stress that you think, it's better to do something different.
Yes.
And it's okay, just do things differently. But it's a matter of understanding how it is that you can nourish yourself. And, okay, so maybe the form takes shape, the shape changes. It takes a different form, yeah?
My nourishment actually came in different areas. Now I look back, that actually I got really inspired and really noticed the movement of women in business popping up everywhere. And where your focus goes, you start to see more of it. And seeing what people could do and how they could make that work in terms of business and life, it really made me feel motivated in moving forward in that way. And I would love for you to talk a bit more about that, of how you bring balance into your life as you do lots of different things.
Wow, it's interesting how life and business, they just evolve together, don't they?
Yes.
And there have been so many different incarnations to my business. But it's my own personal experience that shapes the offering that I currently work with. And I think sometimes it's a double-edged sword. The fact is I'm so passionate about my work that it doesn't feel like work. And if I had a month off, I'd still be doing the same things because I love them. It's what makes me me. And I think when you tap into that, that's where the zest is, isn't it? When you're connecting with your personal purpose, when what your work draws on are your natural strengths, yes? But creating that balance, it's just observing when it's time to back off. And I think we all have different sort of warning signs when we're overdoing it. So for me, there's a very old injury that I incurred from my ice skating days. When I'm pushing myself too hard, I feel it in my lower back, and my lower back is saying, hey, just take stock. Or it's when scary mummy shows up, when I'm not as patient and compassionate and present. So it's just knowing your triggers and hopefully taking action before they really flare up. But that balance is, we are constantly renegotiating, aren't we? And it comes from just mindfulness, mindful choice, observing where you're at and thinking about what's actually going to help me achieve what I'm trying to set out to achieve in this next moment, whether that's, mothering, or whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's just, keeping the house ticking over.
Yeah. And putting those boundaries in place and not being frightened of asking for what you need. And
yes.
I'm very lucky that I have a wonderfully supportive partner. But I remember, we've been together 11 years, we know each other very well, but there have been times where I've really had to spell something out, not because he's, not intelligent by any means, but because he wasn't living my experience. And unless I said it in a very clear, logical way, he didn't get it. But once he did, and once he knew, it just opened up the conversation so much. It was amazing.
Mm. And that's such an art form, isn't it? One, being aware, because there are so many times where I'm not even aware myself. And so how can other people meet my needs if I'm not clearly articulating it myself? So it's just being present, isn't it? And then giving voice to your needs. Give yourself permission to give voice. And also give yourself permission to shape the help that's offered. That's okay too.
I would love to talk a bit more about the inner elder, and how it's been really useful for you.
I love the concept of the inner elder. We are all very well versed with the inner critic. Yes, we all know it. The point is too that we all have one. Yeah, it's not as if some people have it and they don't, others don't. Everybody has an inner critic. And I think what helps me more personally is, rather than trying to stamp out that inner critic and say, I shouldn't have that thought, I shouldn't have that feeling, I can't or I mustn't, which for me just personally sort of inflames it and amplifies it, right? Rather than doing that, I just make space and I say, yeah, there you are again. I hear you. But rather than pass the microphone to you, I'm going to pass the mic over to my inner elder. Oh. And my inner elder is that future grey-haired version of myself who is just ready and waiting in the wings to offer a word of kindness, of encouragement, a soothing voice of, sweetheart, of course you feel as you do. That's normal. Anybody would. And by tuning in with that, I'm tapping into a sense of kindness, tenderness, curiosity, and compassion. And I think all of those qualities are really potent mood alchemists. And they help.
Yeah, it's so important. And one thing I realize, especially running your own business, is sometimes that inner critic, you feel like you've said goodbye to one particular story and then it pops up and says hello when you're least expecting it. So being able to pivot into that inner elder is so useful.
That's it. At the end of the day, it's just a thought.
Yes.
Yeah, the inner critic is just a thought. And your mind is designed to think. Yeah, so don't give yourself grief for having a particular thought. Just recognize that it's just a thought. You don't have to invest your identity in that particular thought. You can have another thought, yes. And the same goes for any sensation, memory, or emotion. I think if we just give ourselves the space and time to think and feel, but then we make some mindful choice of, reframing or what will help us achieve what we're setting out to achieve in that moment, and then take action there. So it's not just being a passive recipient of our thoughts and our feelings. It's also, there is some choice that's guided by our values. We do take action, don't we? But we connect mindfully with the inner elder, and that helps us navigate life in its full glory.
Oh, and we want to have long, beautiful lives. This is the thing, is that sometimes you can get so caught up in the moment, or what you're doing this month, or what needs to happen on your to-do list. But ultimately, that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming to live long lives. So I would love to know what the best thing about your job and your lifestyle is.
Oh, what a great question. Do you know what? I adore my work. I love that I get to connect people with their calm, abiding center. We all have one. Sometimes we just forget it's there and we need to be reminded. I love that I have the privilege of that. And in that, there's also a sense of cultivating a feeling of self-love, self-acceptance, and self-compassion. And great things blossom from that place. From that place, we step up into a fuller expression of ourselves. We tend to speak and act with greater kindness, and that affects every single person that our life touches. It's such a beautiful thing seeing this, what I call the upward spiral of joy. It's a deep pleasure.
Oh, brilliant. And how, on the flip side, do you overcome any challenges that come into your working life?
Do you know what? It's having a really strong self-care toolkit. It's, like you said, creating those boundaries, giving yourself permission to enforce those boundaries. It's knowing that there's a time and a place, yeah, and being mindful of that. It's listening. It's listening to my nervous system. Yeah, that's the thing and reminding myself that, like you say, we're aiming for the long game here. Yeah. If I push myself and then fall over in a heap, I'm not doing anyone a service. I've got to stoke the flames. I've got to keep filling up my cup so that I can keep giving, keep going.
I asked myself the same question of, do I actually really need to do this today? What's going to happen if I close my laptop? And you think, the snappy moment of closing your laptop is such a small thing, but it can stand for so many other things of, do I feel like I've done everything to be able to switch off? And it's a very interesting concept and one that I'm working with on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I hear you. We all have those little lessons where we've got to learn it time and time again, don't we? Yeah.
And
I hear you.
It has to come up in all of the different outfits and all of the different ways, and then you feel like you've done it, and then the finale kicks in where there's the carnival version at the end, and you're like, okay, I've got it, I've got the lesson. And what would you say what would you do if you could do something else for the day?
Oh, that's such a great question. I've just had my head down for so long. Like with the book coming out, it was, writing lots of blogs and articles for magazines. And now that that's done, I've got my head down into the next thing. Wow, I almost can't get my head around that. I would probably, one thing I'd so love to do is just take myself off to a yoga class at the Life Centre where I did my teacher training over a decade ago. That's something I'd love to do. That would be just so joyful. And the reason why I haven't done it yet is, got to travel into London. It's which time, all of these logistics pop up. But thank you for getting that back on my radar. That's something I'd really love to do.
I don't want to add more to your to-do list, but again, if it's going to uplift you, then happy days. And as an author yourself, have there been any books that you've read over the years that have just changed you or have just flipped everything around and that you would really recommend to people who are listening?
Absolutely. There are two that I keep going back to because there are just so many gems in there and they're naturally uplifting reads. And I love that. I want to open up a page and just feel a tonic. And those two books are Love 2.0 by Barbara Fredrickson. And there are so many practices in there that will help people develop kindness and self-compassion. And Barbara talks an awful lot about the upward spiral of joy. And she gives 10 different words for positive emotions. And I think just reading those and looking for those, inspiration or it changes the quality of your day. Yeah, it builds our languaging around emotions. So I love that book. And the other one is The How of Happiness by Sonia Lubomirsky. Now, she's a pioneering positive psychologist, and she takes you through an infinite number of different tools and strategies that will build greater happiness in your day. And it's all steeped in scientific research. It's well-founded and it's really accessible. So both of those reads I found deeply transformative, and you'll see how they've informed my work because a lot of those tools I talk about in my book too.
Fantastic. I love that idea of doing things every day rather than sometimes there can be that dream vision of when I win the lottery or when I retire or when I'm rich or when I'm half a stone lighter, whatever it might be. It has to start from today and from the present moment.
It does, and there are so many opportunities available. We've just got to see them and take them with both hands.
As I was saying earlier, the person that I wanted to connect with also wanted to connect with me too. And that's a very serendipitous thing that happens all of the time, that just putting out good vibes really does come back.
It does indeed. It's just being open to it. Yeah, absolutely.
So what are your daily essentials to make you feel ready?
Okay. Daily essentials would include, there needs to be something in terms of movement for me. And my mantra there is move for mental health. So it could be as simple as some mountain breaths as I start my day, just to sort of get me anchored in a feeling of foundation, strong legs, long spine, and that connects me with my personal power. And movement too, if you can move the arms, you stretch your arms overhead as you breathe in, lower the arms back down by your sides as you breathe out. That helps you breathe better. And when you breathe better, you feel better. Now, what I like to pair with movement like that is some kind of scent. So if I'm feeling a little low, I'll use some kind of zesty scent. Or if this is some kind of movement that I'm doing before going to bed and I'm wanting to unwind and soothe, then I'll use something that's, lavender based. So it's pairing scent with your intention and mantra as well. So I could take a mountain breath and just feel the sensation of moving, or I can pair it with some kind of affirmation around I am strong, I'm resourceful, however it is that I want to feel in that moment. And I can do that at any interval in my day. None of this takes any extra time. It doesn't take any extra energy. Okay, maybe I'm not going to break out into a mountain breath in the middle of the office, but I can still feel the sensation of breathing. I can lengthen my spine. Yeah. So they're my daily essentials. It's using the body, it's using the senses, and it's also harnessing my mind in a constructive way.
Yes. That's interesting what you say about scent. Sometimes when I'm looking for a new shower gel, I could be in the supermarket and I'll have a little sniff and then I'll suddenly go, no, that's not the one for me, because again, it needs to be something that is uplifting, that is going to start my day in the right way and connect with your senses.
Something that speaks to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a whole host of different products that allow me to take scent with me. So I have a particular perfume that I use in the morning. I have a room spray when I'm doing my yoga or meditation, or if I just want to kind of create a shift, I use the room spray. Or if I'm settling in to listen to a podcast or listen to some music or do some relaxation, then there's the scented candle. Or if I'm on the go, I have a little hand balm that I can just gently, lovingly massage into my skin and enjoy the scent. And again, it's another mood booster.
I'm going to do that because I got a fantastic advent calendar for in December, and every day it's got lots of different things in. So I'm going to suss that out. That's a really good tip. Thank you. And what
you're
advice
welcome.
would you give to your teenage self?
Oh, I love this question. And do you know what I think? It kind of comes back to the inner elder. And the reason for that is what I would say to my teenage self is very similar to what my future grey-haired self is saying to me now. Yeah. The message is not hugely different. It's go gently, sweetheart. It's okay. It will come. There's time. Be kind. Yeah. And that's still the same thing that I need to hear now, because I'm in such a hurry to get all of this stuff done and achieve and create. And, sometimes less is more.
Yeah, and put a coat on.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had that necessarily in Australia, but many a time in the UK we were out in very tiny dresses, and we could have done with a coat, let's just say. And
yes.
And finally, Suze, where would you like to be in 5 years' time?
Oh, do you know what? I'm so loving right here and now. I don't need a great deal to change. I just want maybe just a little bit, a fuller expression of me. So I definitely have another book that is just, it is tearing around my mind, just waiting to come out. So I look forward to putting pen to paper there. I think just continuing to see my children flourish and grow. I'd like to reconnect with my Australian roots again, because it's been a long time since I made a visit, but we're going there in Easter. So that we're already setting the wheels in motion there.
Lovely.
Just big love and a sense of we're in it together. That's what floats my boat.
And isn't that lovely that your children are going to see that as well, rather than gosh, connection is so important. It really is. And
it really is.
I find it with my son sometimes he just wants to sit down and look at me sitting on the sofa and not do much more than that, really. It's really lovely with children how they just simplify everything.
They do indeed. They're wonderful teachers, aren't they?
Oh, so much. And so we would love to give away a copy of your book. So what I will do is when this episode goes live, I will add it. I will add a graphic to Instagram, and people can comment down below, and we'll perhaps run some sort of competition or something that perhaps you're going to do. So I look forward to sharing that. But if people want to come and find out more about you and the book, where shall they come?
Wonderful. Well, come and join my wellbeing community on Instagram, and it's just Suzy Reading, SUZYREADING. And that's where I put all my tips, all the stuff that I'm learning. And on Facebook, Suzy Reading Psychology and Yoga, and on Twitter, Suzy Reading. And the book, that's where you'll find my healing journey. And basically everything that's helped me, you'll find that in my book, The Self-Care Revolution. And I hope you find that deeply nourishing and uplifting.
Oh, it's so wonderful. I would highly recommend the book, and I know that it's going to be one of those that just stays on my bedside table that I can dip in and out of as and when I need it. Thank you so much for all your tips. I've really loved chatting to you and our conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you thought of the episode and share any takeaways with me. Come and find me across social media at Nicky Raby, or you can visit the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast.